My name is Kristen Currie, and I am the morning meteorologist for KXAN TV in Austin, Texas. I've been here in Austin for about 2 years now. I'm actually from Southern California, went to school in Colorado, started my career here in Texas, went to New Mexico, and now I'm back. So a true scientist through and through. Didn't go to school for journalism, English, or anything. I went to school for the science, and that's what I love, and that's what I do every day, super early in the morning. But it's a lot of fun.
Awesome, thanks. So my first question is just, why did you choose to pursue a career in meteorology, and what initially drew you to that field of study?
You know, it's really interesting because growing up, I actually wanted to be a science teacher. I wanted to teach second grade science. I thought that was the best age. I love science. That's where the passion is for me. And when I went to college, I pursued environmental studies because that kind of gave me a little bit of all the sciences: biology, geology, chemistry. And then for one of the degree requirements, I needed an internship. It could be any science internship. And I ended up finding a weather internship at the ABC station in Denver, Colorado. And I was like, okay, well, I might as well. I needed the credit and loved it. I thought it was so fun. I was like, this is really cool, because I do think there is a little bit of teaching even in what we do. And, you know, I think that kind of fulfills the teacher drive in me. But it's just, you know, every day is different, which I think also helps me, because I have a hard time with just kind of the same thing over and over again. I like to change it up. I like the spontaneity of it, and the weather's always changing every single day. So that's kind of what keeps the drive alive for me. And I honestly, I just kind of fell into it, took the internship, and then I took another one, and that ultimately led to my first job. So that was why I guess how I got there, and why I stay as a broadcast meteorologist, because it's just every day is a different challenge. Every day you kind of get your butt kicked a little bit more with the unpredictability of weather. But I like it. It makes me a better forecaster, and the experience, you know, you just get better and better. The more you know, the more you forecast, even if it's a busted forecast, and makes you better the next day.
Absolutely, I love that. My next question is just a little fun question. What is your ideal weather? Are you a summer? Are you a winter person?
My ideal weather. This one's tough. As far as like me personally, if I wasn't working, it'd probably be like the sunshine in the 80s. Like I said, I grew up in Southern California, where we didn't see a whole lot of weather. So that I think is kind of comfortable to me. As far as covering weather goes for the job, I do love winter storms, just because it's a little bit more slow paced. And you can take your time kind of explaining to everybody, this is what's happening, this is why it's happening. They're a little more complex. Severe weather too, you know, it's fun as long as it's a couple of days. You know, it's when we get those back-to-back days of severe weather, when they turn into long shifts, and you're worried about your community, you're worried about your neighbors. Those can easily go the opposite way. But there is a little bit of fun to be had when you're, you know, covering a big thunderstorm, or you can see the line of storms coming through. That is, from the job perspective, the fun side of it, I guess. But if I'm just sitting outside in the backyard, it's sunshine and 80s.
Honestly, me too.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, love the sun. Yeah, so my next question is, so how did you become really comfortable with speaking publicly in front of large audiences? Did you, or did public speaking come really naturally to you, or did you struggle initially?
I definitely struggled. So I hated public speaking when I was growing up. To me, it was not my thing. I got super nervous, very anxious about it. What's really interesting, and I think a lot of people might not think of it from this perspective, is when I'm on camera and in the TV studio, it's me, my camera, a traffic gal, and 2 anchors. So it's basically, I'm talking to 3 people. I can only see about 3 or 4 people in front of me, and a computer. That's all our camera is. So you don't really feel like you're public speaking, only because I don't see all the eyeballs looking back at me. You know, that camera is only working one way for me. And that kind of helps ease the nerves a little bit. When I first started on air, I was really nervous because it kind of got my head a little bit. I would talk really fast, and I would talk with my hands. With it now being year 8, year 9 in the industry, I've kind of worked through some of those nervous habits, and I don't get any of the butterflies anymore typically when it comes to being on TV. But that's it. It's just, when I'm in front of my green screen, I'm not necessarily talking to an audience. I'm just talking to a camera, or I tend to think of it as like a friend behind the camera. That way I can say it without all the technical jargon and that kind of stuff. And that's what helps me, I think, get over the nerves and get over some of those anxious tendencies.
Yeah, that's really, really great. Oh, this next question is something I was just really curious about. So we see meteorologists on the TV all the time. Are there also meteorologists who work kind of behind the scenes? And have you ever worked that type of job before?
Broadcast meteorologists are just a small sector of many more meteorologists that we have really all over the globe. So the National Weather Service are the guys and gals who issue the warnings. They're a part of NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration with the government. We have meteorologists that work in like the airline industries, making sure, the planes can navigate around big severe thunderstorms or big winter storms, really everything. The United States Postal Service has meteorologists. The Air Force has meteorologists. There's probably a meteorologist in so many different industries that I can't even name them all, just because weather is so important. And that's a big part of what I do too. Weather affects everybody and a lot, if not everything we do. So there are so many roles when it comes to, predicting the weather. I'm trying to think if I've ever done a total behind the scenes role. Before I went to mornings, I was doing weekend weather. So I was on air during the weekends, and then during the week, I would do the noon show. So you'd see me on TV at noon. And then after I was done, I would help produce some graphics and help tweak the forecast for the meteorologists coming in at night. So some of that was a little bit of behind the scenes because I was working on projects and segments that would air later, but you wouldn't necessarily see my face or hear my voice. But yeah, the camera part, I think, freaks a lot of people out, and that's not necessarily a deal breaker either. We have digital meteorologists too for a lot of the TV stations where they're literally just updating a website, updating the weather app, social media, that kind of stuff. So they're not on air, but there are meteorologists everywhere.
That's awesome. My next question is, so I've seen your bio and I've seen all the different places you worked. Could you share just a little bit about the different places you worked and how each job was exciting or maybe different from the other?
Absolutely. So my first job was in Lubbock, Texas, and I was the morning shift. And that was during only in that with the morning shift, we're typically waking up at around 1:30 and 2 a.m. So I went from going to be a night owl in college to waking up in the middle of the night. So getting used to the schedule, I think, was hard, but Lubbock was different only because Lubbock gets a little bit of everything weather-wise. They get the big, nasty, severe thunderstorms. They can get some really detrimental ice, damaging ice. They get nasty winds. It was a good kind of like get your feet wet market, only because they got literally everything weather-wise. Then when I went to Albuquerque, Albuquerque is unique in that TV market covers the entire state of New Mexico. Mm-hmm. So it was different challenge forecasting wise because I wasn't just forecasting for the Albuquerque area or the county that Albuquerque was in or all the surrounding counties. I was literally covering more than 30 counties, and we had elevation changes with mountains up to our north, plains in the east. And so that was hard just because you really had to strategize how you were going to cover the forecast for the day, how you're going to prioritize where you spend your time, because we usually only get about 2-3 minutes on air giving the forecast. So that definitely, I think, is where I made the most growth as far as my on-air presentation goes. And then, of course, here in Austin, what's interesting is everything's kind of the opposite, right? It's all micro scale now. Now we only have 15 counties, but there's a lot more people within those counties that are affected by weather. So there's a lot more detail in our forecast. Obviously, accuracy is priority. But I think Austin's a good challenge too, because I've actually never worked in a market with a high risk of flash flooding like Austin does. So I've really had to learn my way around what the Highland Lake system was, Lake Travis, feeding into Lake Austin and feeding into Lady Bird, like figuring out all those technicalities, and really learning the terrain to figure out where do we see flooding first. You know, I've never had in Lubbock, you know, everything was kind of flat. So flooding wasn't really an issue unless it was like the intersection. But the devastating flash floods that we have here in Central Texas, that was something that I really had to research and take some time to do my homework and learn.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Crazy experiences, but super, super interesting. My next question is, if a person in high school or middle school is really interested in pursuing a career in meteorology, what science courses would you recommend focusing on when choosing high school courses?
Ooh. So I would say meteorology is basically math and physics. So if truly interested in doing meteorology, I would get really good at math, and I would make sure to knock out those physics courses, because I'm pretty sure I went all the way up to calculus 3. Maybe,
Wow.
yeah, so it's a lot of math, but basically you're learning the math of the computer models. So that way, when we do use the computer models, you know what's going on. And of course, the science, I think, especially my role at KXAN is very different because I'm not just a meteorologist, but I'm also covering climate science too, since climate change is becoming a bigger topic, with more people being aware of it. So that was huge in actually them recruiting me to come here because I had that background. So the more science you can get underneath your belt, that I think would be crucial, especially, you know, for a broadcast meteorologist. I would say, in my personal opinion, the best way to get your foot in the door would be to go the science route and then learn the TV stuff as you go, rather than go the journalism route and then trying to learn the science, because the science, that's the hard part. The TV part comes naturally once you get going with it.
Awesome. What type of degree would you pursue if you wanted to have a career in meteorology? And do all colleges have this type of degree, or is there like a specialized program that's offered at only some institutions?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I actually, like I said, didn't know I wanted to be in broadcast meteorology when I graduated high school. So I went to the University of Colorado at Boulder, and they actually don't have a meteorology program. They have a minor, but they don't have, you can't get a degree in meteorology. So I took the environmental studies route and then got the minor in atmospheric science. I would say if you are interested in becoming a meteorologist, like we talked about before, go the science route, you know, and it doesn't have to be meteorology. It can be environmental science. It can be physics, you know, it can be any sort of science degree. And then you can learn some of the other classes along the way. I will also say too, Mississippi State University has an online broadcast meteorology program that I did after I graduated, just to kind of fill in the holes of some of those more specific weather classes. And that is very popular with a lot of broadcast meteorologists. It's about 3 years long. And it's a nice supplement to a degree that you already have in science. So that would be my advice, is to get some sort of science degree and then maybe pursue the Mississippi State University. It's all online. You don't have to like actually go to Mississippi. Any other role in the newsroom, I would encourage journalism or English, but meteorology, we're basically the scientists of the station. So even if it's biology, geology, geography, anything like that, that would certainly be a benefit.
Awesome. Great advice. My next question is, what was it? Oh, have there been any pros or cons to being a woman and working in the field of meteorology?
Absolutely. So let's start with the good stuff. So the pros. I love, my favorite part of my job is going into classrooms, especially with the little bitties, and seeing some of the little girls say, oh, I can do that, you know, because I think there is a little bit of a stereotype that we're just, you know, pretty girls on TV reading a script. And that's not the case at all. You know, yes, it's a visual medium, and yes, there's certain things that they want us to wear and how we want to do our hair, but that's not the priority. You know, the priority is knowing your stuff and knowing the weather. And so that's what KXAN prioritizes. And that's what I went after in college, was really basically knowing the stuff so I could be smart on air, you know, and not have that question come up of, does she really know what the weather is going to do? No, I know, because I took 7 years of college to figure it out, you know? And so, and I'm confident in that, and I take pride in that. And I think I like to show that to not only, you know, kids all across Central Texas, but specifically the little girls, because we are still very underrepresented as far as females go in the broadcast industry. So that would be huge. I think the pros to that is just, you kind of feel a little bit like a trailblazer, because I am the only female meteorologist on my team. I work with 5 other boys, you know, so inspiring, you know, some other girls to pursue, do what I do and to do what I love, I think is certainly a pro. The cons, I think, are pretty obvious. Like, obviously we take on a little bit more criticism for not only what we're saying, what we're doing, but also what we wear. The TV industry can be brutal when it comes to viewers expressing their opinions about our appearance. So that's probably the biggest one. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think just the viewer feedback can be the biggest downside to this job. And both men and females get some pretty critical emails, phone calls, that kind of stuff, but they're far more slanted at females than they are males.
Gotcha. Oh, this next question is actually a fun question. So have you ever been a storm chaser?
Ooh, yes. Well, for a day. So most of my career, I've been the morning meteorologist. So I haven't, most of the time, you know, I'm stuck in studio covering the storms, but every once in a while, they let me out. And I remember one time in particular when I was in Lubbock, I actually got to go out with our storm chaser. We had a storm chasing vehicle, and I got to go out and chase some severe thunderstorms, and it was a ton of fun. We were obviously safe. We knew where the storm was going. So we were a safe distance away. And I think it was a lot of fun. It takes guts, I will tell you that, because once you see, you know, a funnel cloud or a big old severe thunderstorm sitting in front of you, you kind of think like, okay, I only have so much control in this situation. You know, Mother Nature is always in charge. But it is an experience. And I think that experience makes me a better meteorologist on air.
Yeah. Okay, so my last question, I initially wrote it as a really big multi-part question. I'm going to go ahead and split it in 2. So the first part is just, what has been your biggest lesson you've learned through your education and your career?
Ooh, biggest lesson I've learned in my education and career. I would say personally, it's more probably a personal lesson than anything. And that is, it doesn't matter what people think. And it's so easy to say, and I'm not perfect at this either. I definitely have moments where I get down on myself. But what I've learned through 3 markets, 3 jobs, is you're never going to please anyone. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you get those hate comments or if you get those mean, nasty emails that say, I don't like your dress today. And sadly, 90% of the criticism we get, it has nothing to do with the weather, which is crazy. It's always about what we're saying, how we're saying it, what we're wearing, that kind of stuff. But I've really learned over the last 8 years personally not to take that stuff to heart and to always respond with kindness. My go-to, anytime I get a nasty email, I always will say, like, thanks for watching, because you know they are. If they're saying something mean, that means they're watching. So that personally, I think, is the biggest thing I've learned over the last 8 years is to just do you, basically.
Absolutely. Such a good lesson to learn. Honestly, I think we could all definitely learn from that as well.
Yeah. It's a hard lesson. Sometimes they hurt. On some days when you're having a bad day, the last thing you want is an email from the middle of nowhere saying they don't like your dress, you know? But more often than not, I overcome those messages and say, thank you for watching.
Awesome. And then my next one is just kind of 2 parts. So what piece of advice would you give to a young student who is interested in becoming a meteorologist? And you talked about it a little bit, but just what types of internships or job experiences should students look for pursuing while studying in school?
Absolutely. I think, you know, if anything, the first and foremost in a non-COVID era, I know we're almost there, reach out to meteorologists, you know, especially before we did the pandemic. I would invite guests into the studio just to kind of see what we do, look at the behind the scenes, watch a newscast from inside the studio. I think a lot of meteorologists are really receptive to that. So email you know, a local meteorologist, and I can give you my email too, if that helps, but any one of us, we'd love to kind of help you start that journey. As you get older and you can start picking your classes, like I said, the math and the science classes are what's going to help you later on down the road when it comes to the meteorology degree. And then the best thing would be the internship, because the internship is where you'll get to come in 2 or 3 times a day and actually work with the meteorologist, get the nuances of the forecasting. And even, you know, towards the end of my internship, I was producing stuff the meteorologists were actually using on air. So I felt like I had a purpose on the team. And that kind of helped me bridge that gap from intern to actually being full-blown on-air meteorologist when I graduated. So I loved my internship. I hope everyone would be able to have that opportunity. I know at KXAN we have internships too. We've had a few weather interns that have come and gone, and it's your way to really make your reel. We let you practice in front of the camera and practice with our graphics, and it's just a good way to kind of to start that journey on your career, which can sometimes be a little tough. You know, there's not a whole lot of us meteorologists out there when it comes to the TV side. Mm-hmm. So we know people, we know the different markets to start in, and it really, really helps get your foot in the door.